Call this meeting to order, please. So first item this evening will be roll call. Director Eto, if you'll start us, please.
Hiroshi Eto, Director, District 5.
Jeffrey McAnalloy, Director, District 1.
Claire Wilson, Director, District 2.
Sally McLean.
Thank you. So now we'll do the presentation of colors. If you'll please rise for the Todd Beamer High School JROTC. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Jeri, colors. Order, colors. Right, face. Port, colors. Forward, march.
Please be seated. So our first item on the agenda this evening is the approval of the agenda. Do I hear a motion?
I move that the Board of Education approve the meeting agenda of April 14, 2015 as submitted.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Now I need approval of the consent agenda, please.
I move that the Board of Education approve the consent agenda of April 14, 2015 as submitted.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I just did want to point out, because I asked for the clarification myself, that on the consent agenda where it says approval of receipt of policy and procedure 3131 for choice enrollment, that the changes that were made are only to update it to what current practice is, and therefore it's, as it should be, an innocuous change that's included in the consent agenda.
Okay. Anything else? If not, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. And next we will do student recognition. Mr. Blauser?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, good evening, President McAnalloy, members of the board, Superintendent McLean. I'm so excited to celebrate with you this evening the accomplishments of science teams from Todd Beamer, Thomas Jefferson, and Fedway High School this evening, and an amazing dance team from Decatur. At this time, I'd like to invite Joni Hall to come to the stage, or to the podium, to introduce Coach Jeri Glasser and the newly crowned state champions at the Washington State Science Fair, the ones in the white coats out there, I believe. Ms. Hall.
So I'm not going to tell you very much about this because Mr. Glasser can speak a lot better to what these students have done to earn the recognition that they've got. But they did participate in the Washington State Science and Engineering Fair last weekend and won numerous awards, including a first place in a category that goes along with $20,000 a year for a 4-year scholarship, a trip to Pennsylvania to compete in the International Science Fair, and a chance to win a whole bunch more money for one of the students. I'll let Mr. Glasser talk about that. I would like to tell our students how proud I am of all the work that they've done. They spend hours and hours outside of school, outside of all their homework, also the athletics and other things that they do, participating in this science club that they've all put together and run for several years. And it's amazing the things, you're gonna be really surprised when you hear what they're doing. I feel really safe for the world in the future because you guys are gonna fix some problems that we have out there, and hopefully I will be one of the people that you help. But that said, I'd also like to thank their their families, because without your families and their support, I don't know that you would be where you are. So make sure that you remember that every day and tell your families thank you. And I would like to say that I am really impressed with the way these students have shown their community, their school, and our district, how fantastic you can do things here. So I'm going to introduce Jeri Glasser. Jeri is a math teacher at Todd High School. On his spare time, he helps to coach these guys in a science club that they do after school and at night and into the wee hours of the evening. And he'll tell you a little bit about some of the cool stuff these kids are doing. Jeri Glasser.
I would like to have all the students, why don't you guys all come forward, kind of present yourself to the board up here. Present yourself to the board up here. I would like to again thank Superintendent McLean and the board and Superintendent Blauser and my principal Joni Hall for letting us be here today. This is a time of congratulations for these students. Now, there are actually 9 students from the Federal Way School District who went to the science fair through our science club. I'm an assistant coach along with Carl Greninger, who is just a citizen in our community that deserves some credit for helping to put this together. What these kids have done over the last 3 years is they've built and run a thermonuclear reactor in the Federal Way School area. These students competed in some of the science fairs in the area, the regional science fair, and then as a result of competing in the regional science fair, qualified for the Washington State Science and Engineering Fair, which is held every year in Bremerton. There are 671 participants in that science fair this year. 14 of those participants came from our science club. 9 of those participants are from the Federal Way School District, and all 14 of those participants took first place in their categories at the Washington State Science Fair. That competition occurred on Saturday, March 28th, and I just want to go kind of a roll call, and I'll have them kind of take one step forward to be recognized as I go through this. I'd like to start with, we had an all-freshman team this year. Daryl Worcester was one of the freshmen, and we had 2 other freshmen that were from the Skyline School District, or Skyline High School, that competed. And what they basically did is, the nuclear reactor we originally built puts together essentially a sun inside of a metal box. And that sun was kind of the shape of a star when we first built it. What Daryl and his group did is they made that into a beam. And so now we have a beam of neutron radiation that we can use as a beam on target type of device that was helpful in some of the other students' research. And for his efforts in building this beam on target parallel ring poiser, he took first place with his group. Of course, we needed to control the reactor, so Bradley Hofel was in a group where they actually created the interface, which is a touchscreen interface through Microsoft software, to where we can run our nuclear reactor on a Microsoft Surface, we can run it on a phone, we can run it by being there, but it's all touchscreen oriented, and it kind of reminds you of what Star Trek used to look like. When you look at the deck of Star Trek and you see the screens that they're working on, it's kind of like that, and that runs our reactor. And so that, for Bradley's part in doing the programming skills, the computer programming skills, Him and his partner won first place at the Washington State Science Fair also. Now, Kevin Lee is from Beamer, and Brianna Ashing is from Thomas Jefferson. I'm trying to make sure I get this right. They teamed up, and they won first place in their category for creating the physical background materials that have to attach to the reactor so that our programming group could actually program to see temperature and voltage and all these different measurements. They also put together a new gas feed system to the reactor, so now we can have 4 different gases, deuterium, hydrogen, helium, and yet to be decided gas to go into our reactor to see what we can do in future research. And for their work in the background doing that, they won first place at the Washington State Science Fair. Maddie Rogers and Julia Kim, who's not here, and Jack Bull, Julia and Maddie are from Beamer, Jack is from Federal Way High School. They teamed up, and they took first place in a category involving boron neutron capture therapy. In other words, what they were doing is cancer research. So they were using the neutron radiation from the reactor to treat malignant melanoma and another word I can't pronounce, globlastoma. If I was a doctor, I would know what that is. But what they did is their research was to try and borate these living cells and then find out what the mathematical rate of kill ratio to these borated cells are, so that they could come up with a mathematical formula, which nobody has ever done in all of medical science, a mathematical formula to optimize the amount of boron which is used to mark the cancer cell, so that they can radiate it and kill the cell. And for their research, they took first place. They all won a copy of Mathematica software and a free quarter of college at Evergreen State College. Okay? And the last group I'm going to recognize, Rose Michelle Marzon and Hiram Bach. Rose Michelle is from Beamer. Hiram is from TJ. They won first place in their category for an optical ion reflector project, which wouldn't have been able to be done if it hadn't been for the first group making the beam on target type of system. But for their efforts, they won $20,000 4-year renewable scholarships. They won Mathematica software, an all-expense-paid trip to represent their team and the Federal Way School District at the Intel International Science and Engineering Fair on Sunday, May 10th, 2015 to Friday, May 15th, 2015 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And I know that's during AP testing week, so the science fair knows that too. So the AP classes that these kids take, they're actually going to be registered to take their AP tests back in Pennsylvania instead of taking it here in our district. The International Science and Engineering Fair is an opportunity where countries, regions, territories, states send their representatives, and all of these students from all over the world have a chance to showcase their independent research and compete for more than $5 million in prizes. And again, first place at the Washington State Science Fair. And so I'd just like to congratulate all of them. We kind of put this together at the last minute, and I have certificates for the Beamer students, and the certificates are still being printed for the Federal Way students and the TJ students, but they are coming. They will be awarded to you, and you guys can look at the certificates, and I'd like to hand those out now.
Chances you have to get your picture.
Can we get a picture with the superintendent? Would that work?
Yeah, and Joni.
Carl, would you come up here and join us? And why don't you come up too? We're gonna probably have to make two more. Yeah. I think we're gonna have to make two.
That's cute. Please give another round of applause for amazing. Congratulations, guys. Well done. Yeah, good job. Congratulations. Congratulations. What a great accomplishment. Congratulations. 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 You're great. Thank you. So wonderful. Thank you so
Now
much.
they have to get the heck out of here. We have to go
Oh,
play
yeah,
that.
yeah. Yeah. All right. Next, I'd like to invite Principal David Brower to the podium to introduce Coach Starr and the newly crowned state champion dance team from Decatur High School. Mr. Brower.
All right, well, good evening. I am so excited to be here and to present before you the state champion dance team. And they say a picture's worth 1,000 words, so video must be worth even more. So we're going to watch a short video of one of their winning routines. And that is how a coach reacts when they know you are winning and doing an awesome job. Hey, what a great place to stop. You know, I have to tell you how absolutely proud I am of these girls, not just for their accomplishment, which has been amazing. I want you to set a little bit of context. The seniors on our team are actually no strangers to winning state championships. This is their fourth. state championship. Yeah, that's amazing, isn't it? But this year's a little different because this year we went from 3A to 4A. And they knew that waiting in 4A was a team who had won the state title every year since 2005. They knew that there was a team waiting for them, and that was the team to beat. And they worked so hard. You know, our mascot is the Gator, but it's not just our mascot, it's who we try to be. And for me, these girls really represent what it means to be a Gator. Just like the alligator. Okay, stay with me on this one. They know this is coming. They are strong, both physically and emotionally. They are absolutely smart. You bet you didn't know that the alligator is one of the smartest reptiles in the animal kingdom, but they are incredibly smart. They have an average GPA of over 3.5, have at least 3 AP scholars on the team. They are in the most rigorous classes we have to offer. And then in addition to all that, they spend 20 plus hours a week practicing. These are not girls who have been all studio trained. These are girls who have come to Decatur and achieved what they've achieved through absolute hard work. And that, to me, brings me to the last characteristic of what it means to be a Gator. They are tenacious. Like that alligator that just grabs on and will not let go. They set their sights on a state championship, and they worked hard, incredibly hard. And I think they truly represent our school and our district very well. So I'd like to bring them up here. So please welcome up here to the front of the room the 2015 state champions in the kick and military categories. And as we have a few girls who couldn't be here tonight, they have conflicts. Dance is not the only thing in these girls' lives, although sometimes it feels that way. Paige Lewin, Olivia Evans, and Lincoln Pothin couldn't be here with us, but we do have the rest of our team. If they could just step forward as their name is read. We have Kylie Seo, Alyssa Anderson, Amanda Lyons, Aisha Edmonds, Casey Rivera, Crystal Rivera, Destiny Poole, Joanna Hoon. Hoon? I had it right the first time? All right. Should have just went with my gut. Julia Easley, Kendall Daly, Kiera Henry, Mariah Hill, Miranda Boyqui, Ryan Lacey, Taylor Dominique, and their assistant coach could not be here tonight, Sydney Williams, nor could the coach that you see right there in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle backpack, shouting her enthusiasm, Coach Lindsay Starr. But we are joined tonight, we have joined Miss Carol Edmondson, who is their faculty advisor. So if Miss Edmondson would please come forward. And if you could just all join me in congratulating the state champions.
Another round of applause for the Decatur dance team. want to say thank you, and that concludes our student recognition for this evening. Thank you.
So next we will do public comment. There are blue sheets on the back table. If you're interested in making comments, do fill out those sheets and bring them up. We can hear your comments. So the first comment this evening will come from Gary Robertson concerning the superintendent search.
Good evening, board members and Superintendent McLean. My name is Gary Robertson, and I'm an advocate for teachers, librarians, paraeducators, and a quality education for all our students. And I'd briefly like to comment on the recent search for a new superintendent. There is a saying, the third time is a charm, but in this case, in your case, it was the fourth time. When you hired Tom Vander Ark, who I didn't know, and Tom Murphy, who I did, you hired very good superintendents, but unfortunately, they didn't address the biggest problem the district had, which was the low graduation rates. Fortunately, when you hired Rob New, he did address this issue, but I'm glad to say this time when you hired Dr. Tammy Campbell, you got it right, because to use a baseball term, you hit a home run, and I mean that literally. I was glad to see you were all on the same page as I was. I went to the first public forum and I came back to the second as well because I was so impressed with this individual, I wanted to hear her again. And I believe it would be safe to say that both Dr. Campbell and Sally McLean were both extremely talented and both had impressive track records. And I almost thought the race was so close it was almost like a tie. But when you considered all the qualifications, it was apparent that Dr. Campbell had a slight edge. Not only did she have a PhD, but she put it to good use. And she did an outstanding job laying out her qualifications and why she applied for the job. The one thing that shocked me about her was the fact that she wasn't already a superintendent, because she certainly had the talents. The other thing that impressed me was the clear and concise answers she gave to the very tough questions that were posed by the public. Finally, there were two things that she said that for me literally sealed the deal. First, she said she was a perfect match for this job, and I couldn't agree more. And then second, she said she was here for the long haul, which I think is very important because it indicated that there was a commitment as well on her part. The superintendent search was a long and arduous process, and I only disagreed with one decision you made. In the end, I thought there should have only been two candidates because Dr. Campbell and Sally McLean are literally in a league by themselves. But this was one of your biggest challenges, and succinctly put, you did an outstanding job and are to be congratulated. And now that we have both Sally McLean and Dr. Campbell on the leadership team, I think that's a big positive for the district. And thanks to your decision, I think our district now has a very bright future ahead of it. Thank you.
Thank you. And our next comment this evening comes from Virginia Herrera. We didn't indicate what it was, but.
Hi, good evening. My English is kind of funny, so if you have some questions, please interrupt me anytime. Just I want here to thank you for the opportunity that the children at Thomas Jefferson School has to open a new JV soccer team this year. Has been amazing job that many of people do, and many of those I don't know them. Some are parents, some are people in power, some of them are you that listen, and some of them are just the great job that many people is doing. So I really want to thankful because many of those children need a motivation to be in a school and to do great things. And I personally, I am very thankful for the people that hear me and hear other parents and feel other concerns, because that means it's some people still listening, that parents we are still the people that know more about our children, and that is amazing. So I have a list of names. I know I have just 1 minute and a half. Oh my goodness. He went longer, so I will do the same. So I want to thank somebody that I don't know, Vince Browser, the head secondary education and athletic. because I know this person. Oh, it's a woman. Oh my God. I didn't, it's you. Okay. So this person, I think, find a way to open in a tricky way a soccer team, and I really appreciate that. Adrian Chacon, the principal of Thomas Jefferson High School. Paul Langesten, that is the athletic director. One of the parents that I know probably is more, Mike Hall, that is very, always is in the teams. Of course, the varsity coach that has an amazing, amazing care for these children, Dave Hanson, and their JV coaches that I cannot be more thankful that those young fellows, Josh Howard, John Harper, Taylor, Jeff Cott, the amazing job that they do with these children. I mean, I don't know nothing about soccer. I don't enjoy sports until my students has that drive. So they are doing not just an amazing job encourage the children to be better academically. They give them a space to self-esteem. They know those children are smart, and they validate they are smart and they can do more and more. And they challenge them, and they are just amazing, and give them the opportunity to be in some games, in every single sport, and they made those children feel amazing. And just I know one children that I know very personally that was failing 4 grades, and in 1 week to be and play in the team, he passed the 4 classes in 1 week. So motivation is a great part, and sometimes I want to see all those children in many other settings, and they are smart to be, and this is just great for many of the children. I cannot talk for all the parents, for all the students, but really has been an amazing for me. And thank you for the decisions that you make. Thank you, Claire. Thank you, everybody that I didn't mention that was involved in this decision. And I am so happy I made a comment that Tammy Campbell will be the next superintendent. She's a woman of color, she's so strong, and I hope so she's not a token for the school district, and everybody will support her. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is superintendent comments from Superintendent McLean.
Just a couple comments this evening. I would like to announce the fact that we have 4 schools that are receiving the Washington State Achievement Awards. I'm sorry that Principal Brower has left the room, although I know he's had a long day already, but Decatur High School is being recognized for achieving high progress according to the Washington State Achievement Award calculations. And this is really basically seeing student progress in all of the 41 cells that are measured under No Child Left Behind. So that's a significant accomplishment for a high school. And I'd like to give a big shout out to his leadership and their teachers for making that a reality for our students. We have 2 elementary schools and 1 K-8 school that are being recognized by the Washington State Achievement Award Council for significant progress in English language acquisition skills, and those 3 schools are Mirror Lake, Olympic View, and Nautilus K-8. So again, this is based on the results of last year's data, but it's always worth taking a moment to celebrate that. I know we have, of course, just returned from spring break. For some people, that truly means a break, like for myself. For others, a lot of work happens in the district over spring break, and I just want to give a shout out to Executive Director Ron Mayberry and his team for finishing the, I won't use the right technical terms, but all of the upgrade work on the thousands of devices that our students are using for SBAC testing to help eliminate some of the what I would call bottlenecks that we were discovering during interims. And so I was talking to a couple of the student workers today, and they told me they got that all done over spring break. So that's quite an accomplishment. The last thing I just want to say is I want to also warmly welcome Dr. Tammy Campbell to the Federal Way School District and community. Tammy and I are already working on transition details, so I am confident that it will be a smooth handoff. I would like to once again personally thank I didn't think. Shoot. The Federal Way community, our parents, our staff, our students, and the school board. I am really sorry for the opportunity to serve as your interim superintendent for Federal Way Public Schools. It's been a privilege and an honor, and I'm very sorry, and that's it.
Thank you. No, you're good. No worries. Next are school board comments. So, Director Eto, would you like to start us this evening?
Certainly. Well, first I'd like to say to Superintendent McLean that she should be proud of what she accomplished. And in her coordination with Dr. Campbell, I know that she's going to finish strong to make sure that we get the best start possible with the new superintendent. And as I made in my remarks, I think Superintendent McLean should be very proud of the great hires she made and the stabilizing force she was when this school district needed it. So thank you. I recently went to the open house at Truman and saw their Head Start program. And I was struck again after visiting kindergartens how much learning is going on at those stages, and again reminding folks that according to the data that's presented by the Puget Sound School District Education District, kindergartners are missing 10% of their classes, just like the 8th graders. And if there's a lot of learning going on, that's not a time for parents to be dismissive about the learning opportunity that they're missing. And when I visited the preschool, I was amazed at what learning is going on at the preschool level in terms of getting a head start, in terms of counting and letters, things like that I personally can't remember during my kindergarten years for sure. And so it's really important that parents are getting their kids to these opportunities. The one unfortunate thing is all these preschools are waitlisted. It's good to see that on the agenda we do have an opportunity to talk about negotiations for additional space, but of course funding will have to come with it so that we can take on additional children. Also want to give a shout out to Ron Mayberry and his team in the IT department, because apparently at Truman they're stuck between this maintenance agreement where the Puget Sound folks have some responsibilities and we have others. And regardless of who has the responsibility and where that confusion lies, Ron and his team went out there to take care of the issue that they were having with overhead projectors that weren't connecting up to their laptops. So hopefully that'll get resolved through our efforts, even though it may not be our fault. One of the things that the teachers told me about, just to kind of emphasize how the socialization process is important, is to think in terms of how much learning time is lost if a teacher or the paraeducator in the class has to button up a child's coat before they go out to recess, or tie their shoes, and how many times that happens in a day. That's all learning time that's lost. And so the faster the kids get socialized and are able to take care of themselves, the more time they have in the classrooms to really do some learning, which is going on at the preschool and kindergarten level. And so really all the help that we can do through parent liaisons and such to get parents to understand how they can help the kids to get the most opportunity out of the classrooms would be a great thing. That's all I have.
Director Wilson?
I'm in a new place and my microphone's to the left, so it's I feel kind of odd. So I want to thank Virginia Herrera for coming and talking about that, because I know sports is important, and sports is important for competition, but sports is also important for who we are as individuals and how we feel about ourselves. And I know that opportunity made a difference for her son, and I know it's made a difference for a lot of other kids, and I hope we can continue to figure out those kind of creative ways to provide opportunities for more students, especially when we have so many that are coming out and wanting to play sports. I had an opportunity on the 28th of March, which seems like a long time ago, but I guess it isn't so far long ago, to go to Auburn Senior High School over the weekend and for the first time attend a robotics competition that was very well represented by our Federal Way High School robotics teams. And it was unlike any event I had ever been to before, with cheerleaders and dance lines and incredible strategic kind of games that the robots that the teams made had to maneuver and do in timed fashion, and it was a 2-day event. It was absolutely amazing, and I sat up in the stands and just watched, and I thought I was at a sporting event, but it was a different kind of sport. If you ever get a chance, it's a great weekend event, and it's a great family event. There were a lot of families with kids there that did not have children that were high school age, but were there, and their kids were taking part in watching the event. And I guess the one more thing is tomorrow and Thursday are student-led conferences, and I want to make sure people have that on their calendars if they have children in school, that they've made some contact with teachers and are planning to have their students show and share what they know and what they're doing. And then the last thing I want to say is that unfortunately we had another recent death of a student in Federal Way, and Heidi Morales was a student at Decatur and was a Decatur Gator. And I just want to say publicly that my thoughts and prayers go out to her family, to her friends, and to the whole Gator community, because once again, it's a huge loss, and any individual is a loss, but that particular school has really seen their share of it in the last year or so. So I just wanted to say that. Thanks.
Thank you. So just to clarify, I think some schools are doing student-led conferences Wednesday and Thursday. Some are doing Thursday and Friday. I actually have to be a parent that has to see both of those, so it's just there are conferences going on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, depending on which school you belong to, 2 of those days. I'm going to take this opportunity to also thank Superintendent McLean. As part of the leadership team last year, when we made the transition, we asked Superintendent McLean to truly bring some calm to the district. And it was important for where we were at and what we had been through, and some of the struggles and strifes we felt, and the trust piece that I saw clearly, that I even campaigned on. And that has gone off without a hitch. I think that's part of why you can continue to see articles and letters saying that there's tens of thousands that support you. And I hope that you know your board still truly supports you wholeheartedly. And it was not an easy process to go through the process we went through, but what I think all of us did was to make sure we kept students at the center. When we look at a fiscal portion of it, there's nobody that's better than you, we believe, anywhere in this state. And what you've done over the last 15 years is to be commended. And I want to thank you for all that you've done, along with bringing the calm that we needed over the last 10 months. And you have nothing to be ashamed of. We're very proud of you, and we thank you for everything that you've done. And now it's time to look forward. I can tell you Dr. Campbell has kept me hopping. I kind of thought we'd get to March 31st and I could breathe, and there's not been a lot of breath at this point. She is unbelievable, and I'm actually very excited about where we're going and where we're headed and the things that are to come out of Dr. Campbell. She's going to put together a transition team. If there's anybody that has any interest in that, please reach out to me, and we will go through all of the names of those individuals as we look at what's going to be in the transition. She's already begun to share with the board what her entry plan looks like and where that's going to go, and she's actually even got a professionally done piece that she is going to put the communications department hard to make sure that the website looks and that we're seamless and transparent in the way it's communicated. So even though it was a hard decision, it was a unanimous decision. I think it is the right decision when we keep children at the center as we go forward, to make sure that we're doing the absolute very best we can for all in this district, for every single student, all 22,000 of them. And so that's about all I have this evening before I get emotional as well. And I just want to say thank you.
I am reminded that there is one other activity. There's many activities occurring in the district at any given point in time, but you prompted my thinking with a reminder about student-led conferences, the annual family and community engagement or parent survey is available online, and we certainly encourage our parents to participate in providing us with that feedback to help us continue to move forward with the work that we do here in the district.
Great.
Thank you for letting me backtrack.
Sure, no worries. And now we'll go to our legislative report. Vice President Wilson.
Well, I have a couple things. One is today, I don't know if anybody saw it, but Randy Dorn put out his complete plan to fully fund basic education for all students. And basically set out 7 musts in order for that to occur. It's what we know. One is the complete funding of McCleary, or House Bill 2776, and it requires funding of full-day K, lowering class size, materials, supplies, and operating costs, transportation, and both the Senate and the House budget proposals would make a pretty significant progress to get this done. Reducing class size in grades 4 to 12. The plan he has is recommending reducing class size to 24 in grades 4 to 6 and in 27 in grades 7 through 12. So a little bit different. Additional support staff is another one. And he talks about the need to fund the prototypical school model, which includes increasing the number of things like paraeducators, librarians, nurses, guidance counselors, those kinds of, consider those kinds of the whole child things that are outside sometimes of the instructional core. And it goes on, but of course we can't fund McCleary unless we have a budget and unless the legislature can come up with a plan. And both chambers passed their operating budgets last week. And so the budgets are out, but they're a little bit different in their approaches. And both of them fund the K-3 class size reduction. And they also assume changes to other parts of the 1351. I'm going to confuse this, just a second. So class size reduction is in both of them, but how they do it and their method changes, their method of making the changes differ. And they really put out 2 viable options. It just depends on what they negotiate. The other pieces, I don't know, Sally, if you have any more, but there's all of these, still all of the stuff is out there, but they're in a major negotiation, and until they can negotiate a budget, we really don't have a clue what is related to K-12. We have a little bit better picture in the landscape of early learning, because that's more of a, there's more bipartisan support when you look at that. However, we still have a situation where we only have a certain amount of dollars, and we may still end up in a position of looking to see if we've got funds for early learning and funds for K-12. How do we either do and both, or either or? And it can't really be either or. So when we look at early learning, what I do know is that we're looking at expanding our early learning slots. However, they have not in either proposal expanded the full day or the full school day or the extended day, which they did before. They've only proposed the part-day model, which would alleviate some of the facility concerns, because when you have a full-day model, you cannot use a classroom for 2 different groups of children. But we still have issues related to facilities and fundings and staffing and those kinds of things. So it is something that we just need to continue to look at. And I know that on Thursday, the state treasurer will put out his budget that will support what Superintendent Dord put out today as far as how he wants to fund basic ed. So I don't know if that made any sense at all, because it's confusing and it changes by the minute. So Superintendent McLean, if you want to add something, I would love you to get me off the hook.
Well, having three different budget scenarios is fairly typical. I'm actually pleased that we have three different packages to evaluate this early in the session. There was some, over the last few years, it's often been that we've not even had that much. So we're, Jeri, Carlson, and I are planning on doing a presentation at the next board meeting about those three budget proposals to give you a sense of what is common and what is different. And our general rule of thumb has been that if something exists in two budgets, it's likely to exist in the third and final conference or the fourth and final conference budget. So that strategy has worked well for us for a number of years, and I trust it will work well for us in planning for 15-16, because we will make some assumptions and move forward with the information that we have.
Thank you. It looks like it's your show tonight.
No.
Director Wilson?
Well,
Global Learning?
I'm going to give a little report out on our Global Learning committee update. We've had our second meeting and have really had a nice group and some great conversation. And the second meeting ended with three draft definitions of what it means to be a global citizen. And we will come back together at our third meeting and refine those three definitions into one, and then create some recommendations that go along with that, not only really what the definition might be, but also what that might look like as far as actions and activities in the district, some of which are currently occurring and some which students have some ideas about. I will tell you that we had three groups working, and each of them had students. And the groups that had students that took the lead came out with this whole visual cycle of inquiry and cycle of learning around being a global citizen. And the adults at one of the tables, we were struggling with sentences and words. And so it's a wonderful way to see how people think differently and how you put those thoughts together and create something that I think will be helpful for us as a board and as a district as we move forward with that end. So we have one more meeting, and then we will be ready to report out to the superintendent and bring the report to the board.
Great, thank you. Welcome, Director Gregory. Thanks for coming. And now our next piece is on our bond sale update from Jeri Carlson.
All right, good evening, President McAnalloy, members of the board, Superintendent McLean. I'm here tonight just to take a few minutes and update you on the results of our bond sale. You'll recall at the board meeting of March 10th, 2015, there were two resolutions that were approved in support of the bond sale. Resolution 2015-03, which authorized us to participate in the Washington State Bond Guarantee Program, and Resolution 2015-04, authorizing the sale of $10 million of new money, again supporting the rebuilding of Federal Way High School, and also authorizing the refunding of a 2007 and 2008 bond series. So the competitive bond sale was scheduled and occurred last Thursday, April 9th. Market conditions were very favorable, and we were able to secure a debt service savings of 8.37% on the refunded bonds. Said differently, this results in a savings to our taxpayers of about $5.5 million. And this was, you may recall in that original resolution, we had a minimum savings target of 5%, which would have yielded about $3 million. So this was well in excess of that savings target. Additionally, we moved forward and we sold the $10 million of the new money bonds, and the combined true interest rate on this sale was 2.2%. In addition, we were able to continue to maintain our strong credit ratings through Moody's with a AA2 and Standard & Poor's with a AA-. This just shows the 3 bidders that actually bid on the bond sale on the morning of April 9th. And you can see that the bid was awarded to Morgan Stanley and Company, which was the lowest true interest cost, is what that TIC stands for, with an interest rate of 2.22%. And I just want to say certainly that bond sales are not done independently, and I want to say a thank you to Cynthia Weed and her team at K&L Gates, who served as our bond counsel, John Gores and his team at DA Davidson, who was our financial advisor, and Sally McLean and Anita Rhodes, who is team district, if I may. Any questions or comments?
Questions?
I would just like to thank Jeri, if I may.
Well, I was going to do the same thing, so go ahead.
You know, there's quite a production to actually go through a bond refunding and a bond sale, and that is just not an easy task to take on in a time when workloads are already high. So I just want to thank you on behalf of the taxpayers of Federal Way for finding another way to save $5.5 million worth of interest costs and save that tax collection for our voters. I think our total refunding savings now exceeds $16 million. And so it's been a consistent and aggressive process for us to pursue. So thank you, Jeri, for finding a way to get this done this winter. I appreciate it.
I too
Well,
want to
considering those remarks, maybe we could help the fire department and their bond issues with a good news story in terms of how we've, really created a good news story here in terms of managing these types of bond issues. So I think you should be congratulated, and I think there should be an article in the Mirror about this.
So thank you, Jeri. Thank you and your team, and we appreciate all the hard work, getting it done so quickly and so favorably.
We're closing, I think April 23rd is when it actually closes. So
Great.
we're not quite done, but I mean, it's.
We're over the hill
hard
though,
work
right?
is done, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You want to take?
Sure.
Okay. So next is Federal Way High School construction update.
All right.
Dr. McLean.
I am pleased to introduce to you our project management team for Federal Way High School. We have Jason Nelson, who is our project manager for the Federal Way School District, working in conjunction with Green Gazaway Architects. We see Jeff Green and Jesse Alberg both here. Given the fact that this is a significant project for our community and for our school district, I thought you might be interested in getting an update. We will, at the end of the session, touch bases on some changing traffic flow patterns, just so you all are prepared for that when we start shifting cars and buses on the 20th.
Sorry about the technical difficulties here. Good evening, board. President McAnalloy, Superintendent McLean. So this is just a little update on where we're at thus far. Construction has actually begun. We've done a lot of demo. A lot of abatement has happened here. Hazardous materials have been moved over. We have a temporary electrical service that got installed over spring break. Stormwater structures have been put in through parking lot areas. The foundations are now underway. The temporary parking lot up where the old pool used to be is now almost at its completion. This is just some, this here in the lower corner, this is the new transformer that's going to keep us alive during our construction phase. Our power came from one end of the building, so we had to add some new transformers to feed it from another way. Demolition progress so far, they're just about done with demo of the entire building. There's some slab that needs to be pulled up. We did this demo over spring break right next to the building so as to not to disturb the students, because it is loud when they're crunching that stuff up. During construction, we found 5 undiscovered tanks. Very large. You can tell by these 2 guys sitting here, one of them was monstrous.
That's what happens when you're building on a piece of property that's been occupied for
Yes.
decades.
And reused and added to. And footings are now going down for the new building. This is the southwest corner there. This is the phase we're in. What to expect coming up: more foundation work, underground utilities are going to go in. We're going to see a lot of movement on the site. We're going to see steel start coming in, a lot of construction ramp up, a lot of guys moving through the site, a lot of deliveries coming in. The slab on grade will be pouring, and one of the most exciting is the structural steel will start being hung up. Being as we're tearing down one part of it, we're going to lose certain areas of the parking that the students and staff have been used to parking in for decades now. We are giving over the parking lot that is no parking contractor only. That has been the parent drop off here during the construction. It is now going to go away as of the 20th, and we're going to reroute them up to the top there for student drop off and staff and student parking. Memorial Field parking will still be open for staff and students. They can walk through Memorial Field to keep them away from the construction. And this other gravel lot down here that says contractor only across the street will be going away. We want to keep that area clear so the construction can continue without too much hassle. Also, we have sent out letters, or sending out letters to parents, to staff, and the surrounding community, letting them know of a potential traffic burden in that new area, and asking all of our students to start taking the buses as much as possible. This map's going to go out to give everybody a heads up of other ways to exit from this new area and side streets they can take to keep them away from the impacted construction zones. All right.
So I'd just like to add a couple comments about the changing traffic, just so we wanted to make you aware that this change in the traffic flow pattern at Federal Way High School will start on Monday the 20th. We're well prepared to support that. We will have, working with our school resource officers, we'll have a couple school resource officers on the streets helping direct traffic. We have a number of staff that have been trained as flaggers. And again, Dr. Oberst and his team are well versed now in helping parents and students figure out the new traffic patterns through the area, because this will be in play for a number of months. All the way through next year, and people will have to route around and through the neighborhood to get back to Pack Highway. We'll continue to monitor what this is like. I just want to re-emphasize our interest in having students get on the bus, because we are busing all students, or we're prepared to provide school bus transportation for all students to and from Federal Way High School in order to alleviate the surface street car traffic during this time. So we've worked closely with communications. I know Federal Way High School will be sending Connect Ed messages home and to students, and emails and hard copy. We've also communicated with the neighborhood. We've spoken to the city and the fire department. So to the extent possible, and I think it's scheduled for a feature in the Mirror also this weekend. So to the extent possible, our community will be aware. But like anytime any one of us are stuck in a traffic jam where you don't expect one, there's always a little bit of frustration. So if you get calls or emails, please feel free to forward them to us so we can take care of them for you.
Any other questions, comments?
One question. The The architect had mentioned that there was a treatment to the historic entry that he had different options for. And I thought maybe there was going to be some kind of public involvement process in coming up with the final design. What is the process there that we're going to get to finally determine what that entryway is going to, the historic entryway is going to look like?
So we still have some time to make that final decision, and we certainly shared a number of options that the architect had created at the sort of last goodbye to Federal Way High School, but that oldest facade of Federal Way High School is not scheduled to be demolished for another year and a half. It's part, yeah, it's part of the next, it's part of the next phase. So we do have some time to come back and look at those designs, and if, you know, desired, get some additional community input or student input around that, so.
That would be great, because I think it can be one of those hooks that can bring the community in to start cooperating with the school district.
Director Gregory?
I'm curious what the use of those tanks had been.
Some of them were septic tank, and some of them were oil tanks. So, and one of them was just a holding water, a sump tank.
Yeah, because you used to fuel, right? So buses used to be fueling there too, right?
There used to be a bus barn there, yeah.
So was there any contamination then as a result of that?
There was some contamination. It has all been dealt with. EPA was involved. We have environmental consultants out there all the time during this process. They take care of all of our hazardous, so they've documented it. They've removed contaminated soil. So there was some, but not a whole lot, but there was some.
And one other question, when you say, are we transporting all students? There'll be no students driving to school?
Oh, I'm quite sure there'll still be students driving to school.
So it's an option?
It's an option,
Okay.
right. We would prefer to have students board a school bus.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Next item on the agenda is the Lake Geneva house demolition. Superintendent McLean.
Thank you, President McAnalloy. We have a piece of property that we refer to as the Lake Geneva house, or the Lake Geneva property, which is located off of Military, and has the property itself was acquired as a potential future school site, and when it was acquired, it had a residence on the piece of property. The residence was rented for a number of years by the school district, and then we used it to house our AmeriCorps members. And we have a certain legal process to follow prior to demolishing that, and I think we have Rick Levitt here to give you some more information, so I will turn it over to him.
Thank you, ma'am. Good evening, board members and Superintendent McLean. So the house now has been abated. Asbestos has now been removed. We have an appraisal complete. The house has zero value. There's 3 structures on it, a very large barn that's fallen down, a garage, and the house itself. So there's zero value to the house and the structures. The septic tank's been pumped. Security system's been removed from the house. We've asked the fire department and the police if they would like to use it for training about a year ago, and there was no response. The police department was kind of interested in it, but they kind of fell off that now. So we're working on getting quotes to have it demolished, and then move forward with the public hearing and resolution.
Right. So legally, because this is real estate, the board has an obligation to hold a public hearing so that the community can come and make comment about our proposal to demolish that house. And then once you have concluded the public hearing, you can take action to adopt the resolution to allow us to move forward with the demolition.
Do we have a date scheduled for that yet or not yet?
We may try to do that on the 28th or the following board meeting.
Okay, perfect. Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, board.
Next is discussions around the lease negotiations for the early learning space. Director McLean.
So you'll recall that Krista Fryer did a presentation in front of the board at a previous board meeting, talking about our opportunity to negotiate with the new uptown development that's on our old bus barn site to create some additional early learning space for our students here in Federal Way. At that point in time, I believe a motion was made to allow the negotiation of a letter of intent, which is sort of the first step in beginning lease negotiations. We have conceptual agreement around the letter of intent. Given the fact that I was out last week, I know I haven't shared that letter of intent with you, but it is conceptually meets the terms and the parameters that we need. And I would like to move forward with actual lease negotiations where we take the letter of intent and incorporate it into a formal lease. So
I would entertain a motion at this time.
I move that the board authorize the superintendent or designee to enter into lease negotiations for the purpose of providing space for early learning.
I second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, let's take a vote. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And now we will have Executive Limitations 13 presentation by our Assistant Superintendent for Teaching for Learning, Marie Verhaar.
Good evening, President McAnalloy, members of the board, Superintendent McLean, our guest, Chris Poppich, Carrie McBroom tonight, and Deputy Superintendent Mark Davidson. Tonight I'm here to share with you a compliance report for Executive Limitations 13. In your packets tonight, you have a 16-page report. It's not a binder, it's just a 16-page report. And there are a couple pieces of data at the back. Tonight, I would just like to do a high-level overview of that 16-page report. And of course, if there are ever questions that you have regarding any of the items in that packet, you know where to find me. So just to remind our again, 16-page report, this is an executive summary. And just to remind our audience and families at home watching, Executive Limitations 13 states that the superintendent shall not fail to adopt and develop a rigorous, standards-based academic program that enables all of our students to achieve the board's ends policies. In compliance, the superintendent has developed Administrative Policies 2002, Instructional Guidelines, and 2420, Grading and Reporting, requiring the implementation of a standards-based assessment and reporting system for all grade levels. This system is designed to ensure that appropriate and challenging learning outcomes for all students are established at all grade levels in hopes that we prepare all of our students for mastery of content and 21st century skills. So the 5 parts of this EL, the first part is all about developing culturally responsive, challenging, comprehensive curriculum that's innovative and considers class size and organization. So again, tonight I'm just going to highlight for you some of the pieces of this report and not go into each of the areas, but just a few of those. So looking at the topic of research-based, culturally responsive, innovative teaching and learning, some of our evidence that we'd like to present to you tonight is that last year we spent the year examining math curriculum. We know that it's a little premature to begin a full adoption, knowing that there are very few, actually only one, curriculum that are available that truly are designed for Common Core. I believe I forwarded a link to some research that's recently been done of 20 different math curriculum, and out of those 20 different math curricula, only one is truly designed for Common Core implementation or our new Washington State standards. Tonight you're going to hear me try very hard to not use Common Core because I'm trying to switch my language to the Washington State standards because that's what they are. So last year we brought teams together of teachers, and we took a look at 3 curriculum who touted that they were indeed aligned to Common Core, and wanted to take a look at some transition curriculum, not an adoption, but transition curriculum to enable our teachers to have resources in the classroom to be able to use as they implement the new Washington State standards. And we are now using Engage New York for kindergarten through 12th grade and Math Visions project at some of our high school level courses. We also purchased for kindergarten through 12th grade some new ELA resources, some mentor texts, and I'll show you some more about those in a moment, for our elementary teachers. And for our secondary teachers, we've purchased some units that are available to them that are also designed for Common Core. To help our teachers find these resources at their fingertips, we designed something that we believed was quite innovative, and we call those electronic binders, or e-binders. And these electronic binders are available on our website, which actually parents can look at them as well. Currently, they are open resource, so parents and students can see them, but they are really designed for our teachers. And they contain a variety of resources, and I'd like to just take you on a brief walk through those electronic binders just to show you a little bit about what's in there. So if you were to click on Math Common Core and then go to drill down to 5th grade, this is just an example, they all look the same. You would see on the 5th grade page, the top links show us that we have the full document of the Common Core standards there. We've also listed the standards with something called DOK, or depth of knowledge, which shows the cognitive demand of those standards. Also, there are intro and overviews for all of the Engage New York units. There is a pacing guide that is truly a recommended guide that was developed by teachers for teachers to help them condense a 180-day curriculum that's very packed into a more manageable pacing calendar that is a recommended calendar for teachers to use. There's also some pieces in there for problem solving. One of the areas we believed was a little deficient in Engage New York was under problem solving, so we've added some additional resources. We also have documents that have the standards unpacked or deconstructed, if you will, to help teachers kind of make meaning of them. And then for every unit or content topic, there is a module, and you see there the 5th grade module, place value. So they click on those blue links, it takes them directly to that module. There are rubrics, task rubrics, and then it actually goes to the whole Engage New York curriculum if they want to see them all. And then as well, we've added some snapshot assessments that mirror the kinds of assessments our students are currently taking on Smarter Balanced. So if you drill down just a little bit farther, you would see that, as I said, there's an overview of the module or the major content unit. There's some problem-solving tasks, snapshot assessments. In addition to that, we have listed there our priority standard rubrics that we've developed for all of our priority standards, and we've put them in student-friendly language. So when you see I can, the standard is written in a language that in a context that's more easily understood for our students. We also have included something in there called the CUD, and that has nothing to do with cows. It stands for Know, Understand, and Do. And what those are, they are documents that we actually borrowed from another state, very well done, that unpack the standards to show teachers specifically what is it that a student is expected to know, what is it they're expected to understand, and what is it they're expected to do for each of those standards. The same is there for English Language Arts, so this is an example of our ELA 3rd grade page. Again, it includes priority standards and the supporting standards, module maps or some unit maps to help teachers integrate all the standards, because remember there are now 5 areas of standards or content under ELA, and it helps them to integrate the language, the writing, the reading, the speaking and listening. There are proposed curriculum maps that teachers can use to help them pace and sequence their instruction. There are some mentor text toolkits. I mentioned a few minutes ago, we purchased all of our elementary teachers mentor text. And what a mentor text is it's a book that you would find in the library, but it's a book that is able to be used to teach some of the standards by modeling for students using that text. So we have a toolkit which helps teachers to know a little bit more of how to do that. The DOK, or the depth of knowledge, is there, and we've also spent some time aligning other content areas to help teachers with integration, especially at elementary. So there's only so many hours in the day, and there's lots of standards. In addition, in the ELA toolkits, there are graphic organizers, rubrics, performance tasks, which are similar to those in Smarter Balanced. Just like for in the math binder, we also have module lesson maps or unit maps. We have additional resources and GLAD units, GLAD Guided Language Acquisition Design, which is a methodology of teaching that supports language acquisition for our ELL students. And more continues to be under development and added regularly. For our elementary teachers, we have also created something called the Literacy Blueprint. In this district, we've talked for many years about 5-component reading, or a balanced reading approach. And we've never really put it into one place that someone new to our district could pick up and say, what exactly does that mean, and what does it look like? What does a classroom look like to support a high-quality balanced reading program, or literacy program, reading and writing? And one of our elementary coordinator, Angie Neville, spent a great deal of time putting this document together. It is a valuable resource that's being used across the nation. I get emails quite often saying, wow, can we print this? And I say, of course, as long as you put Federal Way Public Schools proudly at the bottom. And it has been touted by our teachers as being a support that has really helped them to be able to see and know and understand more specifically what those 5 components are. Same is true for secondary. We have the e-binders for all secondary, for ELA and math. For secondary teachers, there are also model units that can be found on the e-binder. And as well, their priority and supporting standards are there, as well as module maps, or what we call curriculum maps, and then also some ways to integrate across the content areas. In addition, under the first number on the for EL13, so further evidence is we are in year 2 of a 3-year transition to next gen science standards. So this year, our teachers have 1/3 of the new science standards in their grade books, and we have units that were developed to help them support the instruction in the classroom. Next year, we will add the second third, and the following year, we will add the last third, so that we will have, by the end of, 16, 17, we will have completely transitioned to all next-gen science standards. We're also in year 2 of Race to the Top, Project 1, Learner First work. Now 11 of our identified schools have developed change teams. In your packet, I believe it's the second to the last page, we are being recognized across the region for some work we're doing with math labs in our preschool through 5th grade classrooms. 9 of our schools are employing this in their classroom, and really what it is it's blowing the doors off the classroom, inviting other teachers in, and really having collaborative conversation about high quality math instruction, observing each other, designing lessons together, the best kind of PD that there is, job embedded, and it's actually being replicated across the region. There's a visual in your packet that gives you more information about what that P5 math lab looks like. We've also provided training to all kindergarten teachers on our kindergarten framework, and 82 of our kindergarten classrooms have administered the WA Kids assessment, including our ECAP and Head Start programs. Finally, under research-based, culturally responsive, innovative teaching and learning, we have also introduced the cognitive abilities assessment for highly capable identification. This is our first year of using that tool. We're learning to see how it's going to better help us inform the selection and identification of our highly capable students. We are in year 2. Actually, we are in year 3, and that's my fault. I was talking with Dr. Christine Corbley today, and she said, "Oh, Marie, it's actually year 3." And I said, "Oh my goodness." So I just want to tell you, you also have in your packet the data from 13-14 of our students who took the World Language Competency-Based Assessments, how many students earn credits for those, and in which languages. We're also very, very proud of this program and appreciate the board's support in bringing this to Federal Way. It's truly a very fabulous opportunity for our students. Good news for you is that for this year already, we've given approximately 200 tests. And on Saturday, we'll have our biggest testing day ever. We'll have 80 students testing for the World Competency Language Assessment. Remember, students earn high school credit based on their proficiency. So it's a wonderful way to recognize and acknowledge our students who speak multiple languages. We also increased the number of ELL specialists at the secondary level to 2.0, to 2 FTE, to help regularly monitor grades, attendance, for active and monitored students. I know a few board meetings ago, President McAnalloy asked about what kinds of things are going or happening for those students who are monitored, who are no longer receiving. So there are 2 FTE or two staff members who help to monitor and support those students. We have also expanded the STEM course offerings in CTE at Sahalee, in food science, and TAF Academy in engineering. The second is that that our superintendent will not fail to ensure faculty know and teach the adopted curriculum through rigorous professional development, training, coaching, support. In professional development, we provided professional learning to all K-5 elementary teachers last August in ELA and math, as well as to our secondary 6 through 12 teachers in ELA and math on those resources that I shared with you in the e-binders earlier. We've also developed and delivered blended learning professional learning, that's a double use of learning there, but for content teachers on the implementation of literacy technical standards. So you remember that for Common Core, there are the ELA standards that are deployed, that are used in the classroom, but there are also what we call technical standards that are to be used in all content areas, so science, social studies, health and fitness, music. And so this year we surveyed some of our teachers and asked how they would like us to deliver that professional learning. Would they like it face-to-face? Would they like it partially face-to-face and partially online? And the response was they'd like it both. So we delivered it through Blackboard and did some face-to-face, but also some online learning, and it was actually very well received. We've also offered ongoing professional learning throughout the entire year to elementary and secondary teachers. For our elementary teachers, every time a new module is coming up to be introduced for both math and ELA, we offer a PD session. Unfortunately, it's not paid, but the great news is we have an incredible teaching force in this district, and between 20 to 70 teachers are showing up for these trainings all on their own time to help them prepare for that next piece that's coming in their classroom. We've also offered culturally responsive math training for both middle and high school math teachers by Dr. Julia Aguirre. And for the last 2 years, and I think some of you heard Dr. Javis at our opening ceremony with Superintendent McLean, he's also been working with school teams and our principals and our coaches to discuss what does it look like to design and deliver culturally conscious instruction. In addition, we've offered professional learning around our CEL instructional framework. In fact, everything we do in Teaching for Learning really focuses on that instructional framework. We're so excited to have a common language of high quality teaching and learning. And so everything we do is aligned back to that framework, which is also part of the teacher evaluation system. But the most exciting piece of CEL is really the framework for what high quality instruction looks like. We've had ongoing GLAD, or Guided Language Acquisition Design training for elementary to support our English language learners, and then SIOP training, sheltered immersion training for our secondary to support classroom teachers and the ELL students in their classrooms. We've provided training for principals, coaches, and assessment coordinators on the new state assessments, the digital library, which is a great resource, which is also to support the implementation of that assessment and the new Washington state standards. And we've also trained folks on how to deliver the interim and block assessments. It's been a busy year. We've provided ongoing monthly training for our instructional coaches and interventionists. Our ELL teachers have been trained in using what we call a co-teaching model, and they've also been trained on the new English language proficiency standards. Our highly capable teachers have received training by Dr. Nancy Herzog from the University of Washington, Dr. Margaret McGuire from Seattle University, and Roger Fisher and Dr. Bertie Kingor on differentiation in the classroom. Number 3 is that the superintendent shall not fail to ensure the regular monitoring and evaluation of the academic program and make appropriate modifications. We are in our second year of using the STAR reading and math screener in grades 3 through 12. This is conducted 3 times per year and 10 times can be used as many as 10 times per year for progress monitoring. We also are using the Fountas and Pinnell reading assessment in grades kindergarten through 2nd grade, which is conducted 3 times per year. With the use of our wonderful, beautiful VersaFit dashboard, you can drill down very quickly and to find out how our students are doing, and that data is analyzed on an ongoing basis by not only the schools, but also the district. We have trained all staff on the new Smarter Balance process, the protocols and the resources, as well as Title I LAP students are being identified, as I said before, using our new student information system, which is now so much easier to monitor and track their improvement. In addition, all interventionist instructional coaches and building assessment coordinators have been trained on the newly adopted early warning indicator system. And now that includes the PBIS, or Positive Behavior Intervention System. There's also a glossary in your packet, because I know these acronyms get a little crazy after a while. But we've been able to merge the data for positive behavior intervention into our early warning indicator system. Surveys have been issued to all elementary and secondary teachers regarding the new resources we've provided this year. We want to find out what's working, what's not working, what more do they need, and so we're going through that data to determine next steps. And we've continued to refine and realign to ensure all of our practices, as I said earlier, are truly in alignment with the dimensions of the Center for Educational Leadership's instructional framework. Number 4, the superintendent shall not fail to recommend to the board for approval of instructional materials and textbooks. Well, as I said earlier, we haven't done a lot of recommending of new textbooks at this point. The jury's still out on whether textbooks are really the best way to go in this digital world that we live in. But as you know, just for evidence here, we do have an instructional materials committee approval process. And we also have an instructional resource committee that looks at some of the current materials that we're using. We've also implemented the use of a new tool that we used when we went through the 3 different math curriculums last summer to determine whether or not these curriculum were really, truly aligned to the new Washington state standards. And that is called the Achieve Content Rubric. And it's being used nationally as well as in districts across the United States. It's being used by publishers as well. Teams of teachers vetted all of the mentor texts that I shared with you that were given to our purchase for our elementary teachers. And Edwin Javis, Dr. Javis was actually here. He helped the teachers go through a large variety of text to determine the culturally relevant, how relevant they were before we purchased them for the teachers. We also conducted a survey with elementary teachers to determine which way they would prefer the new Engage New York consumables to be printed. We are printing all of those. We're not purchasing them from the publisher. We're printing them, which is actually cheaper. So when you purchase them from a printer, they come in all different kinds of, some have gum binding at the top, some have it on the side, and we know how little hands fold books back and then the whole book falls apart. So we're looking at how to best create those for next year. We've also begun to explore the implementation of Lesson View under the direction of Executive Director Ron Mayberry. His team has begun to put some of our curriculum resources into what is called Lesson View, and Lesson View is part of the Synergy product, and it will be a place for teachers more easily to get in and jump into those resources like in the e-binder without having to go onto the web. So we're hoping to be able to roll that out next year. We also have begun the conversation of vetting or coming up with an approval process, Executive Director Mayberry and I, for vetting online resources. The instructional materials policy states that we must do that for textbooks, but now that we're moving into an era of purchasing more online, we need a better process for vetting those. So we're hoping to have that completed and to bring to you for next year. And finally, the superintendent shall not fail to recommend and implement a standards-based grading and reporting system. So evidence that I have here for you is that the district is in year 2 of the implementation of the Superintendent's Grading Advisory Committee. The committee has added new members to replace those who have stepped down, although our 41-member committee has really kind of weaned down to about 14 to 16 people who are regulars, who come every month, and who are very vested in the work. We meet monthly. The committee has developed programs to enhance and improve our current system. They've been working in committees, and I know President McAnalloy has shared with you some news about this already. The committees were weighting consistency, behavior reporting, increments in communication. 3 of the 5 subcommittees have presented their proposals to Superintendent McLean, and those are consistency, behavior and increments, and communications will be presenting in the near future. Superintendent McLean will be making recommendations for the district based on those proposals as to how we move forward. Another thing that our committee has done is they gave us some feedback as to the kinds of questions we should be asking in our next grading survey that's going to be going out soon. I don't have a date for that yet, but it's going to be released soon. And so when you see those questions on that survey that will be coming to you electronically, know that our Grading Advisory Committee had a lot of input into the development of those questions. And some of the questions are actually crafted around their proposals to gain more information about how our constituents feel about some of those enhancements. And just a note that all of the grading advisory meetings and agendas are online. And finally, we are in the last year of having a grading TOSA, Teacher on Special Assignment. For 2 years, we brought on board 2.4 individuals who were part-time in the classroom and part-time working at the district level, but in schools, supporting teachers with implementation or use of the grade book and the platform. And we are finding that we've kind of worked this person out of a job because there's just not as much demand for this person's time. So thinking that we're going to be dissolving that position at the end of this year. Each school has an EduPoint trainer that supports the grading platform and training needs. A very small revision was also made to the elementary report card to add a space for teachers to document a student's reading level per 5946 that says that there must be something on the report card to show families where the 3rd grade student is reading. And as I already shared, we're in the process of finalizing. Thank you to Executive Director Ann Cook and her team for helping to create a grading survey, and also to our grading advisory team who helped a great deal with that. And the purpose of that grading survey is to garner input and feedback about the considered advisory proposals, as well as to get a new temperature reading on the stakeholders' current level of understanding of our grading system. Whoa, turned it all the way up. There you go. So what kinds of questions can I answer for you?
Questions? Director Gregory?
Wow.
Great work. A lot, and you can see the progression of activity. I was talking with a teacher the other day, and we got to talking about Engage New York, and the issue was not whether or not it was a good curriculum, but how difficult it is to complete in a year. And you talked just briefly about that, but could you expand a little bit? Is that partially because of where children are in the new system, or does that vary?
I think it's both. So implementing the new Washington state standards, they are more rigorous, and as we've talked before, there are pieces of learning that have been actually moved down. So for instance, fractions is now beginning, it's in the 3rd grade level, even some of it's beginning in 2nd grade. So what's happened for our teachers is happened the last time we adopted new math standards, our performance expectations 3 years ago. We find some gaps for kids learning because we're implementing new standards that are more rigorous. We find that some of the skills weren't quite there that we needed to be. So teachers are having to go back and do some reteaching and providing additional support. So that's one of the reasons that it seems like it's a lot of curriculum to get through. The other thing, as I said earlier, it's written for 180 days. And yes, we know 180 days is how many days we're in school. However, you take out SLC days, you take out, the waiver days, and then you just be realistic about the reteaching. 180 days is not realistic. So a group of teachers came together, and remember, these teachers weren't experts with Engage New York because they just started using it themselves. So we're in the process of revamping those pacing guides, and spring and summer we'll be revising them based on our new learning. But what they did is they took the 180-day curriculum or pacing guide, they crunched it down to about 140 days. And so from 140 days, they then pulled it back down to about 128. Looking at our priority standards, looking at what's expected on the Smarter Balance assessment to ensure we're hitting the most important pieces that have to be hit, but looking at some of the places that we might be able to take out some redundancy. And then they created a curriculum pacing suggested guide to support teachers with that. Even having done that, Director Gregory, teachers are still struggling because A, it's brand new curriculum. Anytime, I remember the first year I implemented something called Everyday Math. It was like, whoa, what happened? So it's new curriculum. Interestingly enough, we're starting to hear more positive responses about it as we move into the spring because teachers are getting more used to it. So we're anticipating that will be less of an issue next year, plus the fact that if I'm a 3rd grade teacher, I'll now have 2nd graders coming to me who had it for a year, and each year we are able to use it, we'll be more consistent. But we also are looking at those pacing guides to consolidate, come back and look at them again, say, did we get it right? What do we need to tweak or change?
So are they a little more expansive than what's required with Common Core and our own standards?
Engage New York?
The breadth of the curriculum?
The breadth of the curriculum, because it's a spiraling curriculum, it will come back and back and back to things, and sometimes while teachers may feel that they need, in fact, the teachers actually in that survey I shared with you, that we asked them how they wanted things printed, they actually asked us to print everything next year. They said, don't give us the condensed version. We'd like the whole thing printed because we want to make the informed decision about what we need to go back and reteach, and we'd like to have it there. So we will be doing that. But as with any curriculum, even though it is designed for Common Core, it's always extra packed, and I think that's just kind of how things are designed.
And one other question, I got more, but I'll wait. The world languages, the ones that we have data on are those that students have requested. If a student comes in and speaks a language other than what we have tested students in, or students have gotten credit, that's still available, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I wanted to tag on to Director Gregory and wonder, any other time we've adopted a new curriculum, has the same issue occurred for teachers. So, you know, I think that sometimes it's like we expect to get from A to Z, and we feel like if we don't get to Z, then we're doing a disservice, but getting to Z sometimes shouldn't be the goal of the year. And I just wonder, you know, is this not unusual when we adopt something new to see teachers feeling like they're not doing what they should be doing or they're not getting that done?
I think our teachers are their own worst self-critics, you know. Having been one myself for 24 years, I was pretty hard on myself. I'm sure you were as well. And so, you know, we just want to do it right. They want to do it right, and they're amazing, amazing educators. And I think partly it's not having the confidence to know what can I let go of because I know it's going to come back over here. Because they haven't, some of our teachers, this is the very first year, some of our teachers did use it last year, so they're feeling a little bit more confident with it. But it's partly, I don't know if I have the confidence to trust that I can let this go because it's really important, so I'm going to do it. And that's how they become familiar and gain, you know, the confidence with the curriculum.
But I would say also, it's the compounding. It's not only curriculum, it's the Common Core, it's the new grading standards. So it's a multiplicity of things that have been compounded into a very short time. Exactly. Which makes me wonder when we really will be benchmarking. And it doesn't sound like it will be the first year.
We are actually going to be working on doing some benchmarking work with math this summer to help teachers determine where students are on a trajectory. Because we've done that for reading, so that's a great question, Director Gregory. We actually are going to begin doing some of that. We felt as a department and as the folks in my department who this is new to them as well, you know, they look to us like, you should be experts on this, the new Washington standards, and we're trying to keep up to speed as quick as we can. But so we know that, especially now seeing that study that's come out that says there's no other curriculum really. So we're going to have to stick with this transition, and the teachers are actually begging for that. They're like, please just let us let go another year. We like it, it's working, the kids like it, it's starting to really make sense. So we feel comfortable now beginning some of that benchmarking work this summer, and that's something we're going to start.
Thanks.
Thank
Director
you.
Etto?
Yes, given the sensitivity to testing, you had one slide that indicated that the STAR assessments could be given up to 10 times a year, but I imagine that would be a really rare event. So could you kind of put that into some context as to when anybody would consider even doing 10 times?
Right. So the STAR assessment is a screener, and it takes between 10 and 20 minutes. And whenever a company publishes an assessment tool, they tell you how many times it can be used, and it will still be valid and reliable. So with the STAR assessment, they're telling us don't ever do it more than 10 times because then it loses its validity. So very rarely do we have schools giving it. So one situation where that might happen is, let's say we have an EL learner who comes in and all of a sudden the teacher's noticing this child is making some really big gains. Rather than keeping them lockstep in the level that they were in, the teacher might opt to put them, you know, give them an assessment just to make sure that they're really teaching them at the level that they need to. So most of our schools are just doing it 3 times, but some of our students who are receiving intervention services and intervention support, we want to make sure that that intervention is working, because if it's not working, we should stop doing it. So they might offer that assessment a couple of more times to students to just ensure that the interventions are really working.
Great, thank you.
So first, you have another?
No, I'll wait till you're done.
I was just going to wrap it up, so if you have another question,
I have a
go
couple
ahead.
more, yeah.
Go ahead.
When you talked about the training and the professional learning, it sounds to me like that's something that probably is important for everyone. But as I understand it, in this case, we couldn't require it because it's an unpaid. So does that mean that we're working towards something like this is somewhat dependent on funding and should really be an opportunity for everyone?
Yes.
As part of the
Yes.
regular program?
Yes.
Okay.
That's a great question, and I appreciate that. What we've done with those, especially for the Engage New York ones, Annie Mosich is an outstanding teacher on special assignment for elementary. And what she does is she comes back after her training. So let's say, and they're all grade level specific. So let's say she does one for 3rd grade on a new module that's coming up. She'll go back to her office, go into a room, close the door, and she'll do a voiceover of her PowerPoint and then post it in the e-binder. So for teachers who weren't able to go, daycare issues, all kinds of obligations, they can still go in and get the gist of what was shared. So we're trying to stay on top of that and make those available, because our teachers have very busy lives. But you're right, you know, there's only 4 days of professional learning, and you know, our teachers' jobs are dependent on it. And so much, the math labs that I was sharing with you, that model, because it's ignited, we received that funding for that through the Gates Foundation. That model has ignited over the roadmap region, and so now other schools are jumping on board with it. Unfortunately, that means we get less money next year from the grant, but that's okay. We'll figure it out.
Maybe more from the state.
Yeah. Okay.
And two other questions. How are students graduating from class to class if, for instance, they aren't successful on one of the core standards? Say you have an 8th grader who doesn't meet the standard in math. What happens to that student for the next year? And then they meet the rest.
So just like one priority standard they don't meet, but they meet all the rest of them? Well, part of our policy states that through reassessments and reteaching opportunities, that's the reason that we narrowed our standards to the most important, the safety net, so that reteaching and that assessment opportunity can happen. But in reality, there are going to be students who might miss a standard here or there, and we're hoping that our teachers are offering additional support, especially if it's, you know, and all of our priority standards are critical, but we would hope that there's being opportunities offered for those students to learn it, because this is about learning.
Right. And then finally, and this may be for Ron, how does all of this equate to our need for computers? Where are we on the technology side of all of this work? Because it's obviously being more and more emphasized that it's that technology is the base of operation.
It's the accelerator of learning, truly. It truly is used as an accelerator. Executive Director Mayberry, did you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I'd be glad to. Over the last 2 years, we've been able to increase our student ratio from an 8-to-1 to 4-to-1, and in part that's because of extra investment from general budget of $400,000 each of the last 2 years. But it's also in part because of technology is, going down in cost. Google Chrome, for instance, just released a new device that's $179, and and I expect that there's other devices coming that's going to bring that. And these devices they may not have the 5-year life expectancies that we had of former Windows devices, but they have I'm pretty sure we'll get a good 3 years out of these devices. They're all support web-based learning, and a lot of the tools that Marie's replied to or spoke of are they're web-based learning that load up in a browser and are supported by those sorts of devices. So yeah, we have more work to do for sure to make sure that teachers aren't left with not an excuse, but the challenge of not having the device when they're needing to and wanting to push that use of that device. And if they don't have enough of them and they can't check out a cart and all those things are, continue to be obstacles, it's something we definitely need to continue working towards resolving.
Great, thank you.
So just a wonder to kind of tie off of what Director Gregory brought up, as we have those gaps, are those gaps passed on from year to year, or how are we following those with students? I mean, we've got the SIS now, and I would hope that we begin to look and think about how do we focalize on each one of those individual students to understand where those gaps are over year to try to make sure that we shore them up. And I don't know if that's being done yet, but just curious about if that's being talked about or thought about.
I think part of the reason that we were so passionate about moving to a truly standards-based system was that it enables teachers to tag all of their work, their assignments to standards. So it should be, and I know several of our schools, Totem Middle School does this every year, where they bring their students, right before SLCs, they print up the standards reports off of Synergy, and the students do a self-analysis of each of the standards to identify and pinpoint where there are standards they didn't meet. And then instruction is redesigned and differentiated to support those students. So I believe we're making headway into being more aware and taking steps to ensure that those gaps and those areas of skill deficiency that students didn't get are being filled in a better way than before. Before, when we were just assessing by or grading by assignments, it was sometimes hard to tell where those areas of deficiency or challenges were. So I'd love to say to you that we are stronger in that area, but it will always be an area that we will have to stay vigilant and hyper-focused, because especially now that the standards are more rigorous, that the depth of knowledge or cognitive complexity is more difficult, that is more important that we spend the time to go back and do the reteaching and the reassessing to ensure that kids have learned what we declare or we deem as the safety net for all of our students. And I know our teachers are, the word differentiation is a word that's thrown out there, and it sounds so easy, and it's like, just differentiate, but educators will tell you it's the hardest thing in the world to do. And so providing the time for teachers to collaborate together, providing them time to sit down and review their data when they're not trying to juggle 15 different things, or kids running in and out, or morning starting and you got to get to the classroom. Teachers need that time to do that analysis of that data and say, so here are 4 students who have not met this standard, who have not met this skill. I need to design now some skill groups or opportunities for those students, and the time is so precious and important. And I know that many of our schools do, all of our schools have PLC time, but really making sure that we value that as a system for our teachers is so important.
So I'm curious, in our conversations around looking now at averaging versus progress over time, whether we've done that to ourselves in some respects, because with our averaging, we've allowed students to say it is okay not to master, because we have many targets underneath the priority standard, and initially, in order to be true standards-based, it was progress over time, and it was progress starting with a 1 meant you had no learning, up through a 4, which meant you've mastered. But now that we allow students and their learning strategies or their learning standards to have 1s or 2s or 3s, it's up to them to decide to go back or not. And would we not have taken care of it? I think that's what you're saying a bit, if we had done true standards-based.
But I'm even talking about an elementary, right? To look at the elementary, I mean, it's all important, and I know we're averaging at secondary, but even elementary, we're still at power stamps in elementary. So my concern is, how do we, over time, begin to figure out, how do we do the handoff, right? So that we know, and that we're aware that these are the 4 and these are the areas that they're done. I mean, we've got the documentation and the data, and that's part of what I keep driving to, is that we need to really look at standards-based at the school levels, what's going on and what's happening, to make sure that we're doing everything we can for every student to be successful. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, averaging is definitely, standards. The standards are not done. I mean, the committee's still working, and it's still an evolution and evolving process that we'll continue to work through, and I know everybody's diligently trying to work towards that. But what I wanted to wrap up is, first, thank you for listening and not giving us a binder. I know it wasn't easy, right? And it's a ton of information that actually probably does need a binder, but you did. Thank you for working so hard to give us everything that has happened over the last year out of TFL. All right, our next item is EL16 Advanced Programs. As you remember, Board, it was presented last time, and so it's time for us to discuss where it stands for that to be in compliance or not. So
I'd like to make a move that EL16 is in compliance.
Motion for compliance, do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? So the only thing I'll add, as I mentioned it last time, is I think it's important that we go back and evaluate what is written into the EL 16 around highly capable, and also our middle school. At this point, it's just focused on high school, and we do have middle years, the Cambridge program, and pre-AP that is starting. And I think it's important that we capture that information as well to see all that are involved in that. And you know, I don't know that 16 is necessarily the exact place we need to put highly capable, but I believe that based on what's required by legislation with highly capable K-12 now, that we make sure that we are looking at that under an executive limitation somewhere. So I would ask at this point that the superintendent bring something back to us sometime soon about whatever change to verbiage we'd like or an update to that to make sure we capture that. Any other comments? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. And our last item this evening, we have the board designated Vice President Wilson and myself to go through negotiations with our lawyer and Dr. Campbell for her contract. What has been negotiated has been brought back to the board, and it's time to open up for discussion around what has been presented. And any questions at this point?
I'll start. I had concerns about paragraph 17 that had to do with performance evaluations and specific dates. And then when I got to paragraph 20, which talks about amendments, if it's the intent of this contract that we can change those dates because things can happen. I mean, we could even have a situation where we determine that a way to assess the superintendent's performance is based on certain data, and then the state of Washington or somebody else that has control of the data isn't going to release until a later date, and so we would want that date to be different. And so if we have an opportunity to revise that date, that was my only concern, and if paragraph 20 allows for that, I thought this was an excellent job.
So yes, paragraph 20 does allow for that, and part of what I think is happening with this is that in the previous contract for Superintendent New, it talked about two times a year that we would sit down for evaluation purposes of the superintendent. Dr. Campbell has asked for specific dates, and we actually negotiated through that about trying to make sure we understand where policy governance is and how that looks. And the two dates that are indicated there currently would fall in line with that process to keep us within policy governance. There was concern from Director Peterson that was also brought up about this area of us not being nebulous enough. And so we did tuck it back to the lawyer and ask, and the lawyer said that he was in agreement in accordance with what Dr. Campbell was asking to hold us accountable to make sure that that evaluative process is happening twice a year, and the dates just hold us to that. So
I also think that as we think about performance evaluations, it's a continuous process. It's not a one-time a year. So one of the things I think specifically as a new superintendent that Dr. Campbell was looking for was some ongoing conversation with the board, and you'll see it's not around ends, it's around performance. And the ends reports go along with our performance and our policy governance and with our reporting, and that part of that performance of a superintendent has to do with the measures of progress on the ends. But there's other pieces of leadership that I know Dr. Campbell is interested in talking with us about as a board, as far as her educational leadership and the work that's happening in the district, aside and apart, I think, from the ends. So it does not hold us to that. It also gives us an opportunity to try this on and see how it works. And it also allows us to then have a conversation next year and say, does this make sense, or do we need to renegotiate? I think one of the things, or change, one of the things is that people were not clear where this lay, whether it lay in our policy governance and our GPs, or whether it's contract. And so we were trying to have it at least be in a place where it was very clear, and we may find later on it lands or lives somewhere else. But it did not impact contractually any flexibility, or it didn't impact any change that might occur through conversation or change in our calendar over the year.
Okay. Any other questions? There are copies on the back table for anybody that's interested in seeing the contract as well.
It'll be posted.
And it will also be posted, yes. So at this time, I would entertain a motion.
I move that the board approve the contract between the Federal Way School District and Dr. Tammy Campbell.
I second that motion.
A motion and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And we are adjourned. Thank you.